So I find that a big part of my work also is when I clarify, I will not give you any faith-based advice, genuinely, mainly because I don't know a lot of things myself. That's the first reason. I'm not a faith-based scholar. I'm a clinician. So I will give you evidence-based things. I will incorporate faith into it as it relates to your core values. If faith isn't something that you're like, you know what, me like the where I am is not some this is not something I want to touch, we will not touch anything in there until and unless I'm noticing that it's coming up as a barrier in your healing journey.
Welcome to Curated Conversations, a podcast discussing real-world issues of equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. I'm your host, Shalisa Jamal, founder of Curated Leadership, an organization that fosters partnerships with individuals and companies to develop their knowledge in the areas of equity and diversity to build inclusive communities. I'm joined today by Sarah Ahmed, the POC Therapist, if you've seen her on Instagram, for episode 25. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Shaliza. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm
Yes.
excited to jump into all things leadership.
Sarah Ahmed, the founder and CEO of Leena, is a pioneer in mental health care. As a seasoned psychotherapist with a heart for the BIPOC community, her journey from the University of Toronto to the forefront of mental wellness advocacy blends creativity and entrepreneurial spirit with deep compassion. Known widely as the POC Therapist, Sarah's vibrant advocacy illuminates the path to healing, making her a guiding light for inclusive support and resilience. Welcome, Sarah. I'm so excited to sit down with you today.
Thank you so much for having me here. Likewise, I'm super, super excited to learn from you, to learn from our conversations, and jump into things that both of us have experienced and struggled with and probably have not talked about enough.
Absolutely, 100%. So, speaking of that, tell me about your journey of becoming a psychotherapist and of becoming a CEO and founder of your own practice, Leena.
Course, yeah. This is a story I don't think I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I feel like it's one of those stories that I'm going to keep repeating till I go into my grave. And
Yep.
it comes down to a very simple concept, which is I was looking for somebody who understood what I would say, or not even say as well, read between the lines, understand the context, the faith-based values, the cultural values that were there, and looking for the supports. And I didn't find it. And I looked, and I got a little bit of here and there, but I was like, but it's just still not what I'm looking for. And so I think that's one of the things that really gravitated me towards, okay, well, I've been looking for this. It's been a while. Let me go into this field and pursue something and become the resource that I was looking for when I was a kid. And I think that's a story that a lot of us can relate to, because when we were kids, we're like, it's not helping. So I'm very, very happy and proud to say, with the mercy of God, of course, and guidance from my supports, I've been able to get to a place where not only did I pursue that in terms of education and trainings and all that, but also curate it specifically to incorporate those, because a lot of the literature and the research that's been published out there, I remember sitting in class being like, oh, hell no, I would never say that or do that. I know the professor's telling us that that's one of the
Mm-hmm.
approaches. I was like, not me. I'm not going to do that. Because I remember also thinking, well, my mom's voice was in my head, and I was like, you know what? Oh man, she would be so mad at me if I said something like that or did that. So I was like, yeah, no. So I think by way of learning as well, and the experiences I've had, and the places I've been in terms of like my work experiences, in addition to my personal experiences, I've been very fortunate, and also I'm very grateful to be able to integrate the two, to say, look, okay, well, I'm going to take these. They work here. They don't work here. This works here. And I'm going to mash it up into something that actually works for somebody who looks like me, somebody who's a
Mm-hmm.
person of color.
Absolutely. And your story really resonates with me because as a young person, just navigating adolescence and identity and, being an East African, South Asian person from the diaspora, and
Mm.
then minority sect of Islam, navigating identity in the world was just difficult in itself. And I could never find a therapist or an EAP counselor, if you will, who could understand my context. And I didn't even feel comfortable opening up because they might think I'm weird or that the family dynamic is weird. Like, what do you mean your parents said you can't go out till you go to mosque? What do you mean that your parents want you to be home at a deadline? You're over 18, like things like that. Or what do you mean you can't talk back or you can't
Yeah.
advocate? So I think that I really longed for a therapist that could really connect with me on a cultural level. And I think it wasn't until probably 3 years ago that I found someone who I could connect to that could really hear me and see me and validate me in a very culturally relevant way. So thank you for going into the field of psychotherapy, and thank you for being there to support other folks of color. So tell me a little bit about your journey founding your own practice. And I asked that because, when we're talking offline before we started, I wanted to share that as a woman of color founding my own business, Curated Leadership, what propelled me in that is sort of the gap of work being done in this space, which of course we know it's really saturated today. But in 2018, when I started, there was a lack of really leadership awareness. I was
Mhm.
also using like a theater based approach. But not only that, I was trying to apply to jobs, to executive level jobs, to do the work I'm doing at Curated Leadership. But I was always like the second runner up to a male, of course, with
Mm.
similar identities to me.
Yeah.
Or I was told, you're not the right fit, or looking for a culture fit, or I didn't have the
Mhm.
right experience. And so that's why I kind of started my own company to kind of take it under my own responsibility, because I was facing all those barriers as a woman of color.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's why I'm interested to know a little bit about, why did you decide to found your own company and your own practice rather than working for somebody else?
Mhm. Yeah. So if you had told me, when I was in grad school, my early 20s, and also just working my way through things in to my mid 20s, that you'd be running your own business, I would be like, listen, whatever you're drinking, I think I'm going to have one of those too today. It's been one of those days. That's what I said. There was no way I would have believed anybody. This was not the plan. When I was younger, this was not in the books. But as I kept working through and building my years of experience, and I was very blessed to be in positions where I had really good training. I was in really good places. I was working in like acute care settings at CAMH, the largest psychiatric hospital in Canada. So I was able to access training or be in situations where I learned a lot. And I'm so grateful for that. And also, interestingly enough, I would be the person who would get picked out from the crowd to be like, hey, actually bring her in, because this is the patient is a person of color. And I think that they might feel more comfortable speaking to her versus a white woman or like a white nurse, or so, like there's so many versions of that same story. So I was like, well, they keep putting me in, especially if it's not even my department, I'm still getting paid to go there. So I'm thinking, listen, they're kind of just like utilizing me to plug me into all these spaces. Maybe what we actually
Mhm.
need to do is, rather than use me as a band-aid solution, you need to actually have a long-term sustainable solution. I'm not the
Absolutely.
solution. And so when I was in the hospital for years, I noticed over time things didn't happen. From there, I moved to the University of Toronto, also doing the same type of work. And I also noticed that, this was very similar. And again, there wasn't a lot of diversity in the space we were in. It did not reflect the community that we were working with. Like U of T is a very diverse community. But if you look at like psychotherapy, the therapists that were there, it wasn't an accurate reflection when at least when I was there at the time. I'm not sure what it looks like right now. And so I was like, okay, it just doesn't make sense. And then also, in addition to that, I'm noticing like when it comes to government institutions, people trying to access supports and stuff, there was a lot of red tape, there was a lot of limitations, and we couldn't do the work we were doing. And generally speaking, when you're working with people of color, there's so many intersectionalities. So, you know what? I'm sorry, for funded sessions, not going to do you anything, like nothing. It might actually get the ball rolling. It's going to take you a couple sessions to even learn how to speak and communicate. Most of us, we just repress things, and you're like, because you're taught, don't talk about it, don't address it, don't acknowledge it. It's going to take you a couple sessions to even warm up to understand and how to communicate effectively,
Absolutely.
and then boom, sorry, funding's cut, off you go. So I was like, it just
Hmm.
doesn't make sense. You're further going to re-traumatize somebody by opening things up and then being like, hey, bye, thanks for coming. Didn't make any sense. So I was like, okay, no, we got to change things up where actually
Hmm.
people don't have a limitation in terms of service that they're accessing. They're able to feel again seen, heard, validated in their experiences,
Hmm.
and not further isolated. And this is the thing this is the point I was trying to say earlier also, which is the last thing anybody needs is when they're going to a therapist to have thoughts of like, oh, they might think I'm a weirdo.
Right.
Initially, yes, we all have our fears, but the point of going to therapy is not to feel further isolated. So we
Or
all go
judged.
with
Yeah.
fear. So
Hmm.
by session, hopefully by session two or three, you start to feel a certain level of safety to be like, it's okay, it's okay. Take a deep breath
Hmm.
and just blurt it out. Blurt it out. Remember, her job is to help you over here. So that's where I was like, no, we got to change things up. And so yes, we need to have a team. And if you look at the team at Leena, I'm very, very, very intentional about who we bring on, the level of training, because there's a lot of trauma stuff that we're dealing with. And sadly,
Hmm.
lot of our folks don't even know. A lot of people don't even realize.
Mhm.
They're like, "Oh, no, I thought
Mhm.
trauma was like a big car accident or like a big divorce or something that happened and this and
Mhm.
that." It's actually a lot of the little day-to-day stuff that we don't realize that
Absolutely.
like kind of stockpiles, and we do have
Mhm.
a trauma response in many
Mhm.
situations, not realizing what's going on. So,
Absolutely, especially intergenerational trauma, right? And from our cultures, and what you said resonates so much because representation is kind of where it begins. And it's not to say that someone who doesn't identify in the same way can't be a great therapist, but they have to have done that work to have the
yeah,
intercultural awareness, to
yeah.
understand different cultures. But what you said also resonates because this happens in the education system as well, where there's like stopgap measures where it's like, okay, you're a person of color, lead the DEI team or talk to this patient. But then what ends up happening is you end up with the emotional burden and burning out, right? And so I'm
Yeah.
so glad you touched on that because one training, throwing you over here and there as a band aid solution is not going to do anything. We need
Mhm.
systemic change, and so I'm glad to see that Leena is taking that systemic change and really implementing that. So,
Yeah.
kudos to you.
Thank you. We've also launched because I started thinking about it, I'm like, okay, it's not just like oh well, we're in Toronto or help no, or actually we're Canada wide, not just Toronto anymore. And so like we're supporting patients, we're like, I don't think it can just stop at that. So what we did is we launched last year September, we launched a massive training program for all the residents, Canada wide, so anyone can apply who's in Canada who's training.
Amazing.
I was like, it doesn't make any sense that we're providing the service but also not the appropriate supervision, because
Hmm.
educational systems, like you said, they're still very
Absolutely.
limited. And so
Right.
their textbooks are a certain type of way, the research in there, research is based off of your population that you're going to access and target, obviously, so it can be very, very biased. So if they don't have access to certain types of research, they don't have access to certain types of trainings, what is going to happen? They're not going to be appropriately trained, even if, let's say, they look like you or me. So we started that, and honestly, I'm quite pleasantly surprised, but also extremely surprised that we get about 10 to like 20 something applications every day, like it's,
Wow, that's
which
incredible.
tells you
It's a
what
great
like the
need.
need is.
Yeah.
People are like, listen, I'm happy to pay out of pocket, no problem, but I just need training from a place that looks like
Mhm.
yours, because I don't feel as though the training I'm going to get elsewhere would be
Yeah,
appropriate. It's not touching all
absolutely. And then it's
and
like,
that kind
patients all sorry about that. There's a bit of a
no,
delay.
no, go for it,
No, I'm
go.
saying patients already face stigma. Patients who look like you and I already face stigma that's inherently part of our culture and part of colonization and white supremacy to seek help, right? Because before we were, a collectivist culture and we didn't have the same issue. But now we kind of face that stigma. And then to walk into the door and have a poor experience or a negative experience, we're deterred from ever seeking therapy. So I really like that you've kind of initiated this amazing training to give back and say, hey, you've done this formal training maybe in a university setting. Now let's build like a really grassroots community based training program to say this is the actual practical steps, because oftentimes we're like up here in theory land, right?
Hmm.
CBT theory, all this theory, but we don't practice it. And I think it's so important to have partners and mentors in your practice, like any field, right? So
Yeah,
I really appreciate that you said that. So, one thing I want to ask you is it's so catchy. This is how I know you. This is how I know who you are. Is
yeah.
your social media handle, the POC Therapist? It is
Mhm.
very pointed. Tell me how you came to this name, this handle. What does
Yeah.
it mean to you?
It really was a representation of my experiences as a social worker myself, navigating like quite literally a decade, 10 years of work. And I really was the only person of color. And I remember actually when I was at CAMH, on my entire street, I was the only one who looked like me. So if I stepped out of the building to go grab lunch, you could spot me from any of the windows and be like, oh, there she is. Get her, you can ask her a question or whatever it is. And so
Wow.
I found that that's where I stuck out like a sore thumb in most places. I'm not mad about it. I was happy about it, because I was like, you know what, this is also an opportunity for me to learn, me to understand what my own blind spots are, and also to go ahead and like add some spice and flavor to the surroundings that I'm in, quite literally. And so that's kind of where it came from. I was like, well, I've been the person of color and I am a therapist. So you know what? Here we go. Let's see if this handle's available. And lo and behold, it was. And I said, well, it's meant to be. And here we are.
Yeah, and I'm sure that it's even more poignant today where we're really, really addressing representation and talking about Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And it's become, a very popular handle. I'm sure you have people trying to knock down your door to take that handle, right? So really important. And also just exactly, it tells you who you are. And it kind of is an inviting community tool too, because we know that, okay, if I message this account, if I go to this therapist, I'm going to get something that is culturally relevant to me.
And validating to my experiences. Yes.
Validating, yeah, feeling seen and heard. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole point, like you said, about therapy, is to feel seen and heard and not
Yeah.
judged. And we talked about just a second ago about academia and therapy being very Western or Eurocentric in focus. And I'm sure you were met with a lot of this during your own schooling and certifications. When did you realize, or was there a pivotal moment when you realized that you needed to decolonize therapy and
Mhm.
center the experiences of people of color in your work?
Yeah, it was actually a specific moment. I remember it so vividly, and this is like well over a decade ago. I remember sitting in class, and I remember one of my professors. He was speaking, kindest sweetheart of a professor, and with all the best intentions, he was teaching us. And I was like, "Yeah, cool, great, this and that." And it was a groups class actually, how to navigate group therapy and facilitate and stuff. And I remember he said a couple things there, and I was like, wait, what? No, no, no." And I also remember thinking like my mom's voice in the back of my head, and I was like, no, 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 no. I could never say that. I remember a couple other classes I also had in my master's, where they were like, and this is how to set boundaries, and this is how like you're gonna navigate conversations with like your family. And I was like, if I said that to my mom, it doesn't matter how old I am, she still beat me to this age, my old age. She
Yep.
is still, and she's gonna, and she'll actually, what that will lead to is it'll further push me away from her, which
Right.
will not repair anything. It'll only further rupture. And I didn't have
Right.
the language to think about repair and rupture, yes, but in my mind, I was like, something just seems very off over here. So, no, sir, I'm not going to do that. I remember another one. This one was a big one for me, where they talked about self disclosure and how we were just, it wasn't something that's encouraged, actually. And I was like, "Are you kidding me? I'm over here telling everybody my stories, obviously with certain limitations. It's not my session, it's their session, but it makes people feel so validated and seen because they're like, "Wait, you're
Yeah.
my therapist and you also have problems? You equally find your husband annoying just the way I do, or like
Yeah.
this drives you nuts with your mom or like your sibling or your in-laws or whatever it is." And I'm like, "Yeah, girl, I'm a human being just like you." And they're like, "Oh my god, thank God. I feel so good knowing that not that you have the same like you're also struggling, but I don't feel happy about that, but I feel so validated in knowing that this is a universal struggle for all of
Yeah.
us." So I
Absolutely.
was like, self-disclosure, no, 100% I'm about to share things.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I don't, you think somebody's gonna sit on the other side connecting with me? I'm just
Yeah.
like, yeah, I got a
Exactly.
sibling, I got a niece, I don't got kids, I got a husband, I got this. I'm sharing these things and I want to,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but that was the thing. And I remember it was that moment also that I was just like, no, 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 you're gonna sit there. Like if I had a therapist sitting in front of me, I don't know nothing about nothing, I don't even know if you have kids, I don't like nothing, I would feel so disconnected that I would just
Yeah.
be like, this is too awkward and formal, that's
Yeah.
not how
Yeah.
my approach is. And I was like, that's when I was like, yeah, no, with like, so it was a combination of like those three things that I was like, yeah, nope, I'm not following what they're telling me anyway in school. So I'll figure it out when I get into practice. and
Yeah.
you
It's
know,
so funny. It
it's
reminds me of like when I was in sessions, even with my current therapist in the beginning when I didn't know her, it was just like that awkward piece where I was like, I don't want to talk about myself. And like that's a cultural thing too. And I was like, so how are you doing? And she's like, great. She'd tell me a little bit. She's like, but this is about you. And I was like, okay. So how are your kids? Like, how's everything? She's like, it's about you because it's so awkward to talk about myself. And I also want to connect and know a little bit. But I think like 4 years into knowing each other,
yeah,
she tells me little things like you just said too.
yeah.
But it's like, so, when she says, how you doing? I'm like, I feel like I got to ask you, how are you doing? Are you okay? So I really resonate with that actually.
Yeah. That's actually almost how every session starts. So it's like, oh, how's it going? My session always starts like this. How's it going? So hit me. What happened? That's it. Hit me. Give me the goss. What happened? What's going on? And
I
they're just
love
like, yeah,
it.
I'm good. And I instantly stop and I'm like, are you though? Are you though? Because currently we're sitting in a session right now. So are
Yeah.
you?
You
Give me a minute.
schedule this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like, no, you know what? You're right. I'm just kidding. No, no, no. My life's a mess. I was like, all right, there we go. All right, let's jump into it. What happened? So that's
Mhm.
kind of how I go. A big part of the work that I do, I find, and it's just a part of my personality as well, is I needed to find what was a fit for me to feel most comfortable. Because initially, the way the
Mhm.
book taught me things, I'm like, this is so rigid and awkward. I feel like I need to wear a three-piece suit to every session, the way
Yeah.
you're teaching me to do things. So I'm like, no, 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 hell no, actually, is what I thought. And I incorporate a lot of humor, a lot of
Mm.
I found humor was something that me personally growing up was a thing that like carried me through a lot of heavy things with lightness, the levity of it.
Mhm.
And I like to
Mhm.
incorporate that in almost every single setting I'm in, whether I'm
Love that.
doing, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a presentation that I'm doing, whether it's with the session, it doesn't matter. But that's the one thing. It's a very strong core value of mine. It was the
Mhm.
thing I also looked for, by the way, when I was looking to get married, and I connected with my husband, and like I'm like, this guy is so funny. I have to marry him. That was it. It wasn't like, so what's your job? How much money? No, I was like, oh my, is he funny? Is he That was one of the first questions that I would always
Yeah.
have, because it was such a core value of mine, and I found it carried me through, and I find that it works wonders as well, because we forget to laugh. We're so
Mhm.
in our own minds that we forget to laugh, and we forget that the world is so much bigger than what's in our head. And
Absolutely.
sometimes it takes us to go on vacation to realize that. And you're thinking, wow, there's so much stuff over here outside of my head, but really did I have to spend
Mhm.
$2,000 on a vacation or whatever it is to realize that? No, I shouldn't
Yeah.
have. So
Yeah.
that's something I also love to incorporate as well in my
Yeah.
work. The humor, to be like, cut that shit out. It's not how it
Yeah.
works. Your
I love
session,
it.
spill it.
Love it because it kind of grounds you, otherwise you can get swallowed up by everything, right?
Yeah,
Um, I love that. Sometimes I take myself too seriously, so I'm
yeah,
gonna really try to incorporate humor. My mom does that in her older adulthood. I would say is I've noticed she really incorporates humor. Like if I'm mad at her or something, she'll say
yeah,
something like, "Oh, change the channel, Shaliza. Change your channel, okay? Just change it." And then I start to laugh, and then either my husband will say that or I'll say that to him.
yeah.
Change your channel.
Oh, that's
But
use
something
that
you
with
said
mom.
kind of resonated. Oh, go ahead.
I said I'm going to use that with clients. Thanks, mom. Change your
Change the
channel.
channel. Change the channel, Shalisa. So then I'd be like if I was, mad or angry, or she's like, don't be so serious. Don't be so serious.
Yeah.
I'm like, but you're always serious. She's like, but I've changed. Um, but you started alluding to this, and I'm wondering if you can tell me because you mentioned this word decolonizing and shifting and changing and things that you learned in class that you were like, hell no, I can't do that. Tell
Mm.
me how you decolonize the therapy experience in practice. How does that even look? What does it even look like? How does it work?
So for somebody like me who started off, and I remember when I first started doing it, like I really was the only one in my class, who looked like me. And I think in my graduating class, maybe there was like two of us, maybe three
Let's talk
max.
about those barriers, right, Sarah?
Yeah. Yeah. So there was that. And even my parents were like, what is this? I don't know what it is. Like, why, like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, what is a therapy? Like, what is a social work? What do they do? And I'm like, I don't know how to explain it to you. I'm just like, whatever. Like, mom, just like pray to God, and like, God will give you some answers and solutions to these questions. Like, I don't know how to answer them. But I'm also very grateful that my parents, even though they didn't understand, and I did grow up in a very strict household, I will say, they gave me a lot of runway when it came to education. They were just like, I don't get it, but whatever. But outside of that, you're not allowed to do anything else. But this one, no problem. I don't understand it, but whatever. You know what you're studying? Cool, great, go for it, do it. So I'm very grateful that my parents allowed me that and created that space for me to do that. And frankly, even if they didn't, I probably would have pushed a little bit to do it anyway. And so when I started really getting into it, because I didn't have a blueprint, because I didn't have anybody to be like, "Hey, so how do you do it?" I didn't know anybody in this field. No, none of my family, none of my cousins, none of my family friends, none of my own personal friends even were in this space. So I was like, "Where do you go? What do you do?" Plus, I didn't have a therapist at the time as well,
Right.
plus
Yeah.
a therapist who I could connect with. So I'm like, I guess I have to create my own blueprint. So the first question I asked myself is, okay, cool. I'm creating my own then. Let me start selfishly by like, what do I want when I'm looking for something? And
Right.
that's how I started.
Great way to
So I was
start.
like, okay, you know what? Self disclosure piece has to come in for me because I would feel as though that would connect with somebody. The humor piece has to come in for me because I feel like if my therapist is very rigid and stiff, I wouldn't be able to connect. I would keep pushing my therapist
Yeah.
to kind of crack something to be like, oh, and there's a laugh. So
Yes.
I started thinking about these type of things, and I was like, okay, this is my blueprint I kind of created. And it took me years to build it. I started adding toolkits or tools to my toolkit. A lot of them didn't work, some of them worked. And the ones that worked, I just doubled down on it. A lot of it also, I was just like Googling up online to run a business. I don't come from a family that has any businesses, actually, let alone be educated on how to run a business. So I was like looking at things. And I remember one of the things I remember reading is you kind of have to throw a bunch of things at the wall, see what sticks. And then once you figure out
Right.
what sticks, you double down on it. And I was very young when I read this. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So the four tools that worked, I'm just going to double down on them. And the 14 that didn't, toss it, fail fast, and move on. And I find
Mm-hmm.
also, like, in terms of building my blueprint, helped me also unknowingly at the time build skills to be an entrepreneur, because the fail fast, bounce back, you're going to have more fails, more no's than yes. These things, I just kept going and going and going. And I think, safe to say, actually, very proudly, I can say it now, which is like I've just built some very thick skin to the point where sometimes I have to check myself to be like, no, 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 this one doesn't require thick skin. You don't need to be so much in your masculine energy to show
Yeah.
this way. It's okay. Like
Yeah.
soft life, baby. Put your shoulders down, put your feet up, rest. It's okay. So I think that that's kind of where it started for me, creating my own
Mhm.
blueprint.
I love that, and I love how you said, two things, right? It's like the barriers of becoming a psychotherapist and then starting your own company and learning about entrepreneurship. I can definitely um, resonate with that because no one really tells you. I feel like I love the business minded stuff. It's in my blood. I feel I love the
Mhm.
marketing piece, but doing it right, no one tells you, right? And no one tells you to do it in a way that
Yeah.
works for you. So really like how you talked about kind of trying what works, what throwing it all out and seeing what sticks and being okay with letting it go. You also said something
Yeah.
that really was interesting is I feel like you talked about decolonizing the therapy space and like you felt as though maybe you have to show up with a three-piece suit or people were really rigid. And I think that really reinforces this idea of expert or knowledge holder. And I think your approach with humor and check-ins
Yeah.
and self-disclosure, like you said, really humanizes the space because
Yeah.
you're human. You're not a
Yeah.
super, well, you're superhuman to me, but you don't have you have some superpowers, I should say.
Yes.
But kind of humanizes people because even in any healthcare setting, folks are
Mhm.
vulnerable, whether it's asking for medical treatment or therapy. So I think that's a really key part of your practice to me. That's very decolonizing in nature.
Yeah, I found that also, when we were in school, I remember, like, yes, they talk about like holistic care and stuff, but they kind of didn't dive
Mhm.
into it. So then when people were
Mhm.
talking, they were like, my naturopath this, or like I gave birth and this happened. And then my mom said, try this and this. It helps healing with the stitches and this and that. And it was like a third-degree tear. And I don't have children. So I was just like, oh, I don't know what they're talking about. But she's telling me like her mom said, make this thing and do this thing and like soak your body in it and stuff. So I started googling things up, and that's where the idea of like ancestral practices to be
Mm,
able to heal a lot of like the mental and
absolutely.
physical challenges that are there. So I was like, wait, nobody talked to me about this in school. And
Mm,
because of the way I remember being raised, there was a lot of like rejection of the self. And I know
mhm,
you've also experienced that. Most
mm.
people actually have experienced that, where you're
Yeah,
like, no, no, my way is not the right way. Actually, the white way is the right way always.
right.
So you know what?
Yeah,
Let me change my hair. Let me try to bleach my
yeah,
skin color. Let me try to do all these things to fit in while I'm here because I don't know where else to go.
absolutely.
And so
Yeah.
a big part of that, I was like, wait, your mom told you this? So I'm like, hold on, let me Google this up. And so I remember literally Googling up like East African practices, postpartum, childbirth for, like for tearing or whatever, vaginal tearing. So I started looking at things like this and I was like, this is incredible because this stuff has been there for decades and
Mhm.
not incorporated any of this. That's when another light bulb moment went off, being like, wait a minute, that stuff that they taught in school, like I don't know a lot of the stuff that's incorporated in holistic
Mhm.
healing. I was like, I have to humble myself because the reality is I don't. And people aren't stupid. I can sit here and pretend to pose like I know. They're gonna be like, she doesn't know. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She's just making
Right,
things up. And the
right,
reality is I'm not meant to know everything anyway, right?
right. Absolutely.
I'm not a massage therapist. I don't know how to do certain types of things. So I often say, I'm like, no, 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 I'm not a doctor. Don't ask me. But I'll tell you what WebMD says so we can read
Yeah,
it together. But that's the most I can help you with, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
It
Help
I
you work through it. I can help you work through it.
exactly and
Yeah.
figure it out. We'll figure it
Yeah.
out. I don't know what it's gonna look like, but we'll figure it out together.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I always
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. You know, you've reminded me in something you were saying about ancestral knowledge, about faith. And
Mhm.
I wonder in which ways, or in any way at all, how your faith maybe plays a role in your practice. And I say that because before therapy was, um, I guess, open and not such a, was before it was,
Mm.
acceptable in our communities, I will say. I remember my parents always telling me to go pray on it, right? Or ask Allah for the answer, or
Yeah.
just, say my tasbih and
Yeah.
I'd get the answer. So I'm wondering if at all your faith shows up in your practices.
So this is actually one of my favorite questions because of what I look like, people have certain assumptions about me. A lot of my actually long-term clients say you were actually my last choice because I didn't want you coming to session with me and judging me for the things I've done. And then, like I saw a video of you or like I just did a consult with you and I got a totally different vibe. And so faith actually, and what they're referring to, by the way, specifically without realizing or even telling me, is religious trauma. I don't want someone like you in session with me because you're going to judge me, which is that's
Right.
exactly what they're saying, right? Like you wear a hijab, so oh, you're probably better than me, and you're probably done a couple things that are better than me, and
You're
I
so
don't.
pious. Hmm.
That's exactly what it is. Ask my mom that, or actually ask my husband who lives with me about how many times I pray in a day. I'm still struggling, and there's a lot of learning that needs to be done on my end as well. Actually, unlearning and relearning of the religion.
Hmm.
There's
Absolutely.
such a huge aspect of faith-based trauma that people don't even realize, and they feel
Hmm.
so guilty to even say it that you know what, I actually don't. I feel horrible saying this, or I don't even know if I should say it. Well, I'm going to hell anyway because the way I've been told by my mom, like I'm such a horrible child or this and that. Like I don't believe in God, or like you know what, God has just been giving me like the garbage cards. He's never dealt me a good hand, so like
Hmm.
yeah, he just hates me. It's so obvious. I'm going to hell. And when that comes up, it actually speaks to a certain level of low self-esteem, low self-confidence, and just like a certain level of like almost like a underlying baseline of depression that's there, which is like, well, God hates me. I'm going to hell. I'm doomed anyway. My mom tells me that. My dad tells me that. My community tells me that. I have tattoos on my arm. I have this and that. So I find that a big part of my work also is when I clarify, I will not give you any faith based advice, mainly, genuinely, mainly because I don't know a lot of things myself. That's the first reason. I'm not a faith based scholar. I'm a clinician. So I will give you evidence based things. I will incorporate faith into it as it relates to your core values. If faith isn't something that you're like, you know what, me like the where I am is not some this is not something I want to touch, we will not touch anything in there until and unless I'm noticing that it's coming up as a barrier in your healing journey, which is you went home, a bunch of things came up. There's some sort of like, well, when I'm home, I wear the hijab and I do this, but when I'm out
Hmm.
and about, I don't do this. I practice this. I don't do this. I don't do that. So, like, where do we find the balance over there? I will address it and bring it up then. Until and unless that happens, I will not bring it up. Most
Hmm.
people, majority of the clients that I work with, it doesn't matter what their religion is.
Yeah.
Whenever I get a sense of trauma coming, like religious faith-based trauma, I will address it. But it's done in a way that's more so clinical because it's like, these feelings of guilt are coming from a place of like you internally just believing that you're just inherently a bad child. You're not a good child because you don't pray, because you didn't this, because you didn't that, you didn't go to church on Sundays, or you stole this or you stole that. But what you're forgetting and not realizing is, or you're using substances. What you're forgetting and not realizing is, even if you were to bring in God into the picture, there's certain tests that you've had. And when you're using alcohol, a lot of times alcohol is used as a means to self-medicate. You don't think your God knows the context of what's going on over here? The way you've been taught. So educating them about like faith-based trauma is something that I find is very, very pivotal. What they want to do with their goals with their religion, that's very different. But providing them the
Hmm.
education of like this is faith-based trauma, understanding it, learning it is something that I find is so um what's the word I'm looking for? I'm like doing this hand gesture.
Liberating, liberating.
Yes, it's so liberating because they're like, yeah, no, it's true. I never thought of it like that because I'm so busy like shitting on myself to be like, I'm bad,
Yeah.
I'm this, I'm that, I'm going to hell, I'm this, that I forget that, oh, yes, yes, perhaps I was used as a means to self medicate, or I'm doing this
Hmm.
because this happened, or this is what my context was, or this is how I was mistreated or humiliated and not carried with dignity as a child. So, of course,
Hmm.
I'm trying to do this. right?
Mm-hmm.
Providing them that education also gives insight into certain types of behaviors they've had, problematic behaviors they developed as a means to cope as a child, because
Mm-hmm.
you are at the mercy of your parents. But then how do you figure out a
Absolutely.
balance there? So I find that that's how it plays into it.
I love that. I love that. And, you know, unless folks are in a session with you, I know that it's hard to kind of find this information, but there is a lot of information bites on social media these days. It's inundated by it.
Yeah.
And I know you've said that Instagram is not a substitute for therapy. Can you tell me a little bit about what you mean by this, and what are you finding in terms of how people are using social media as
Mhm.
self care, growth, or even as sabotage?
I think social media actually is a great launch pad to dip your toes into something that you have no idea, no experience about. That's one. Two, I find social media is incredible to teach you language. There's a flip side to the same coin, which is there's a lot of people who kind of use therapy speak to weaponize it. So quick to drop terms like "don't gaslight me," "you're a narcissist," label people a certain type of way when actually they don't fall into those labels. I think gaslighting is one of the most commonly misused terms, which is, oh, you disagreed with me on something? You're trying to gaslight me. But no, disagreeing with someone is very different from gaslighting because it's the intention behind it. You and I can see the exact same thing go down and have two different narrations of it versus me saying, well, no, Shaliza, you didn't really know that. And my intent behind it is to manipulate you. That falls under gaslighting. So people don't understand the context of it. So it's a really great launching pad. It's a really great place to understand, like, this is how you communicate certain things. This is actually the issue that's a very common one in my head. I think I'm the only one who struggles with this, so it's very validating. But truly, no one can explain to you something in 60 seconds with a sound bite in there, with a trending song, with whatever the algorithm's dancing and doing that day, or shadow banning, actually, in my case, and many of our cases these days with what's going on, and most recently in Rafa. Unfortunately, this is the thing that where I find is a good launching pad, but also take it for exactly that. Don't go past level one, two, and three. Access the information and leave it there. You want to get deeper, then you actually have to go into something a bit more tailored and unique, because they will get into the context that's very specific to you, because it's not a cookie cutter formula. And frankly, like, a lot of people will be like, well, what's my therapist going to tell me that I don't already know? And I know you
Yeah.
know this because your therapist probably told you all the things you already know. But
Yeah.
it's what people forget is there's two aspects to it. One is the knowledge piece, and two is
Mm-hmm.
executing it into action in a manner that's actually
Absolutely.
realistic for you. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you tell me,
Mm-hmm.
well, listen, you want to be able to like get into shape or get healthy and work on your mental health, you got to wake up at
Mm-hmm.
7 a.m. I know I got to work out. I know not to eat a donut. You think I'm about to wake up
Yeah.
at 7 a.m. to go to the gym? Hell
Yeah.
no, girl. That's not sustainable for me. So that action piece, you've lost me. So now I'm stuck
Right.
with this knowledge and I don't know anything to do with it. And then that's where I get stuck.
Right. I
Social
remember
media.
that too. I think I had a therapist once tell me like to, I think I said something, I don't know what, maybe it was about like food. And
Yeah.
she told me to put an elastic on my wrist and to snap it. I was like, dude, I'm smarter than that. That's not going to work for me. I
And
can't
I
just
think
like
that's
snap
one
something
people.
and change my behavior.
So, you know, one thing a lot of people don't realize is when people have so much trauma and so much like intersectionality of things that they don't know where to go, they develop an extremely high sensitivity to people's moods, to navigate certain spaces. In short, what I'm saying is these folks are brilliant. You can't try to pull one on them to be like, well, do this, do that. No, no, no. You literally have to give them something that keeps up with their intellect, that keeps up with their level of stimulation that's required for them. I'm not going to be like, Shaliza, sit here. I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to tell you ever, a client like you, to be like, listen, sit there, girl, and just like three deep breaths, take and walk out, go walk in your backyard. No, 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 no. I'm going to be like, here's a mind game, here's a puzzle, here's a backflip, and you have to do all of that in 30 seconds. You're going to be like, boom, 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 I got it. That worked.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and you know that's part of that piece because it's when we think about the therapy, it's people are like, oh, there's free therapy online. Yeah, those are sound bites, and then there's the cultural context, and then there's the decolonizing, and then there's something just being relevant to who you are with all your intersecting identities.
Yeah.
And so something you put on your Instagram page specifically is experiences and issues that South Asian folks face. For example, the importance of marriage that connects to identity, living with your in-laws, going no contact between children and their parents in South Asian context, as well as what we spoke
Mhm.
about intergenerational trauma already. So
Mm.
maybe you can speak a little bit about that experience about the South Asian community and how sometimes it's misunderstood. And what do psychotherapists need to know about other communities when they're engaging?
So I'm trying to figure out how to condense this because this one I can talk for hours.
I love it.
I think so my intention behind touching upon these topics, another one I talk about a lot is also like physical intimacy and just intimacy in general, and finances as well, because those are the two common topics that most people don't know how to talk about with their spouses. Talking about sexual health or just in general physical intimacy, emotional intimacy, and also like financial health and financial expectations, especially being mindful of like, today's economy. How likely is it that you will be living large on a one income household, but also like running the household chores as a single person? So I'd like to touch on these because I want people to kind of like use these as a launching pad to start thinking about these things like, oh, you know what,
Mhm.
I never asked these questions. And so I remember doing a round of videos which was like three things to ask your partner, four things to do when it comes to like so and so you're going on a first date, these are three questions you want to ask yourself before you go into that first date. Because the idea was like awareness, awareness, awareness. And that really is the intention behind that page, which is like increase the awareness, because I find that there's so much work to be done. There's so much stigma. Some things are inherently just tied into our brains that we don't even think about it. As a child, like you're what, 2 years old, 3 years old, you're like, yeah, I have to get married. Like no, you just have to get married. Like it's
Yeah.
just one of those things. We never
We're
have
already playing
conversations.
house, right? Wearing those.
Exactly.
I always thought I was going to get married in a white gown and walk down the aisle until I realized, no, I do a nikah and I don't get married in a church that I've seen on TV. I mean, I could have if I wanted to, but
Yeah, and you're not going to have that like over the top romantic proposal where you're super surprised. The proposal is their
no.
parents are coming to your house.
Yeah.
That's your
Yeah.
proposal.
Yeah.
And then he might do one after, but at that point you already know you're getting married. It's not a surprise. Let's be clear about this, right? So I think it's just like getting people to really think about things, to get them to like challenge their preconceived notions that they never even thought about. That's my intention behind creating these videos. And so when people are talking about it, if you look at a lot of the comments, we talk about, like I say, a South Asian girly myself, this and that. The comments are filled with like, I'm from East Africa, this is what happens. I'm from Nigeria, this is what happens. I'm from so and so part of the world, this is what happens. I'm from, Colombia, and this is the exact same thing. So what they're actually referring to is in majority of the parts of the world outside of North America, it is a community-based collectivist culture. And these things come up so often. So even though they
Yes.
see me speaking about certain topics and they're like, yeah, you're from this part of the world, I'm from this part, but the problems, we're on the same Wi-Fi with that
Same.
one.
Yeah. Absolutely. And speaking about that,
Yeah.
around the world with communities of color, culturally, it is still taboo to say that you're suffering from mental health issues. And also, there's stigma about receiving help. So, can you tell me how can children of immigrants, racialized folks, communities of color bring up the topic of mental health with their parents and receive or ask for the care they need?
So one way that I always recommend for clients to do it is speak to your whoever the person is, the receiving party, speak to them in a language that they will understand. Okay. So what that looks like is a lot of our parents are very quick to have conversations about back pain, knee pain, joint pain, this pain, that pain, not realizing that these are just physical symptoms, physical manifestations of mental health issues, underlying mental health issues. So yes, your jaw is going to lock because you're so anxious. You're grinding your teeth. You have IBS. You have XXX type of symptoms with this and this. And these are all literally physical manifestations of your underlying mental health concern. And so start with the physical symptoms. Start with the physical symptoms. Speak to them about that. Another thing also, being South Asian for us, yoga is a very big practice that they understand. And yoga requires a lot of breath work. And so slowly incorporate this stuff. And what you're doing is you're slowly introducing the concept of mental fitness. This is my favorite term. I like drill this into anywhere I go, mention this because I want people to take away from mental health. For them, that's very stigmatized. So reframe it into mental fitness. Mental fitness really is the day to day things that you do. So for me, for example, I wake up in the morning and yes, I'm very guilty of like instantly checking my email at the time, but I will not see any clients till much later on. Like my morning starts early, yes, but clients, no, you're not going to catch me seeing any client until it's like a specific type of situation. But no, because in the morning I need my brain to be a certain type of way, and that's mental fitness for me. Because you know what? One of the questions people would always ask as a mental health therapist, how do you care for your own mental health? I give myself a certain time in the morning to kind of have, I guess, just create some like empty space in there to be able to hold space for people who are going through very challenging times. Because I do mostly complex trauma work. So I can't have that first thing, 8 a.m. No, 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 no. You're not going to catch me doing none of that work at that time. I need a coffee. I need to pray. I need some music. I need some like slowness there before I kind of get into it. And so I find these are the things that are just really, really helpful to also create a balance that's there that works for me, that also works for the clients. And It took me some time to get there. I'll tell you that. It didn't happen overnight.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. It takes time to kind of slow down and unlearn, like you said
Mhm.
earlier.
Yeah.
Um, and speaking of that, you often post about the book that you're currently reading. What book are you currently reading right now?
Today I posted about one book, but like that one kind of dabbled into it. There's the short answer is there's like 17 books that are all open at the same time, and
Like
like
me,
one of them,
yes.
yeah. But
I
my
never
current,
finished.
I'll tell you my current favorite one, the one that I keep
Okay.
gravitating towards. It's What Will People Say by Sahaj, founder of
Okay.
Brown Girl Therapy. Very
Yeah.
good book. Sometimes
Okay.
uncomfortable in the sense where like when I read this I feel kind of naked because she's like talking about me, but obviously it's not about you.
I love
But
it.
like it's so nice to see that. And I think sometimes people think like, oh, but you do this work and that, and but I'm like, no, it's just like with her, she's done it so beautifully that you're like, oh, like she opens up the book talking about something with her dad, and I'm like, oh, I feel uncomfortable reading this for you. I'm like, girl, your dad said that to you? Oh my god, cringe, 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 cringe. Because I'm thinking, I don't even know what I would do if my dad said that to me, right? So I just find
Yeah.
it like,
Okay. I gotta read it.
oh yeah, it's so like near to my heart right now. That's the one
Yeah.
book that I would say like it's
Yeah.
at the top of my current favorites. A lot of it also, I'm in addition to like psychotherapy based books, I love reading faith-based books because I'm
Mm-hmm.
unlearning and relearning my religion in a manner that's very, it's very romantic, it's very feminist,
Mm-hmm.
it's full of love and mercy. And unfortunately, that's not what I saw growing up about it, or that's not what I learned and saw growing up. So I find those
Mm-hmm.
books are very humbling and very calming for me. So
Yeah.
that's my favorite right now.
I love that. And what is it about reading that is important to your practice and self education and professional development and care?
It's the accessibility of it. So I find that I'm an introvert. A lot of people don't know this about me. It's just I'm happy to stay at home with my cat, or even before I had my cat, I'm happy to be with myself. I enjoy my company. It's accessibility of like sitting here most comfortable in my pajamas, laying down in whichever position my body feels comfortable in, having my e-reader and just being able to like tap and read and access information so quickly. I find that it's easy. It's easy, it's convenient, and there's something about being lost in it, which I think a lot of people relate to. It took me some time to develop that skill because I found that with social media, with TV, with computers and stuff, like checking my email, checking this, checking that. So I put certain behaviors into place to be like, I'm reading right now, phone's on silent mode in the other room. I don't want to hear it. And like I'll have some snacks around me and stuff, and I'm just
Yeah.
like
Ooh.
lounging. Yeah. It's a
Sounds
good
ideal. I'd love to talk to you about how we can craft that time because right now it's like I'm either reading for work or reading an article or preparing for a client or feeding the baby or, I
yeah.
need some like mind numbing. I just started mind numbing Bridgerton season 3 just to numb
Yeah,
my
yeah,
brain
yeah.
because I can't engage in anything else. But I would love to learn more about this practice, especially the snack part, a little bit of popcorn with some sriracha,
Yeah.
you know.
There, you got it, girl. You already there, halfway there. That's it.
I'm visualizing it now. I just gotta put it into practice.
Yeah, well, the snacks, I'll tell you, it's an easy answer. The snacks are always something that's easy, very quick and easy that I just keep around, that I can like eat in any position, laying down. I don't need to sit up and nothing like that. And the second thing is, I find I'm thinking about, okay, like I really like it, and this is the thing that you want to think about. If I really like something, will I figure out a way to do it? Whether it's like you have to hop on a call with like a girlfriend or whatever it is, you're like, listen, I'm hopping in an Uber. Let me get like I'll call you real quick then. I do that with my e-reader. If I have to hop in an Uber and go somewhere, if I have to take the TTC and go somewhere, I'll actually just take my
Mhm.
e-reader. It's so light. It's great. It was the best gift I've received actually. And I take that with me, or audiobook, put it in my ears and I'm walking. That's what I do.
Right. Yeah, audiobooks is what I can do for sure.
Yeah.
I feel guilty though. I feel like I'm cheating, if that makes
Listen,
sense.
as long as you have access to your information, that's all we need to know, baby. It's all good. That's it.
Okay, so I'm still reading. I have permission to say I've read this even
You
though I listened to
do.
it?
That's it. Listen,
Okay.
folks they get Blinkist subscriptions. They read a 15-minute summary and they're like, yeah, I read 6 books today. I'm like,
Woo! I never heard
yes.
of that. I need to do that. Well, I really enjoyed speaking with you, and I have one last question for you and that I would like to end with.
Hit
Can
me.
you tell me, Sarah, what brings you joy?
Oh, there's so many things. So before I answer that question, I'll tell you this. It took me a long time to figure out what brings me joy. And for majority of people, myself included in that, the things that bring me joy are literally the most simplest things that we used to do as kids and then we forgot to do it. So for me, actually, it's many things. Like I enjoy cooking because it's a creative aspect of it. It's not always good, but but you know what? I still have a good time doing it. I love artwork. Like I love, love, love. I actually just found out about this. These two South Asian girls who are doing block printing and they're Toronto based. So I'm just like, when is their next event? As
Ooh, tell
interested as
me.
I am, yeah, it's called Sukoon, Sukoon,
Okay.
Sukoon Space. That's what it's called.
Okay, yes,
Just
we're
found
gonna
out
go
about
and
them
check that
yesterday. Yeah, so beautiful. And you know what? Like so simple. They're like take tote bag, whatever you have at home. All you do is you take the block print, and because it's so ancestral and traditional to us, right? They used to do it. That's how they created fabrics, bed sheets, and stuff. So I find like I enjoy that a lot. I enjoy reconnecting with things that I rejected of myself when I was a kid, which so now I'll do a certain type of thing. I started wearing exclusively shalwar kameez outside. I'm wearing shalwar kameez right now too. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? No, because when somebody looks at me, I want them to know. I want them to know things about me. And whether it's through
out.
my clothing, whether it's through my
Mhm.
jewelry, whether it's through my like beads, whatever I have on me, I want them to
I love
know that
that.
about me. And so
I
those are
love
the
that.
things that I'm finding like it took me a long time to figure that out, but there's so many aspects that I find joy in that also tie into my mental fitness. So whether it's wearing shalwar kameez, whether it is cooking a certain type of thing, whether it's like things like block printing or like looking at certain
Mhm.
silks, the way they're made. And I'm South Indian, so like I just am enjoying these or looking for like South Indian
Love
food
it.
somewhere. I love it.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I have some questions I'll have to ask you after. Is there anything else that I didn't ask you that you'd like to share with our listeners?
If there's nothing nobody heard, the one thing that I would love, love, love people to pay attention to is every day when you pick up your phone, before you pick up your phone, ask yourself, what am I doing for my mental fitness today? Not
Mm,
health, my mental fitness. What is that day to day stuff? Do I want to wake up with my morning? Do I want to start my morning with a coffee? I kind of had food a little late. My stomach's a little bit off. Is it a good idea to have dairy? Or maybe I'll just have a green tea. That in itself is mental
mm,
fitness. So you're just becoming
mm.
more intentional about
Where?
literally smallest thing because it's like, yeah, you
Mhm,
know what? This morning is a peppermint tea kind of morning. No coffee for me.
mm, I
Well,
love it.
I'd
Being
love to
intentional.
very.
Yeah. And how can folks learn more about you, your work, your practice, all of
So they
that?
can go on to www.hellolena.com. That's the
Mhm.
practice. They can also find me over there. I'm on socials. It's the POC Therapist, whether it's on TikTok, whether it's on social media, Instagram. I'm there as well. I'm also on LinkedIn. With it's not the POC Therapist on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, it's just Sarah Ahmed, and you can
Dang
search
it.
over there. I know somebody probably took the handle on LinkedIn. That might have
Right?
happened, and they can find
Well,
me there, and
awesome.
they can always reach out.
Wonderful. So we'll put all of that in the socials. We'll be sure to have that all there. Again, I really, really enjoyed our conversation, and I have a long day today. Speaking of mental fitness, and was kind of worried that I wouldn't have time for a break or wouldn't be able to be present.
Yeah.
But your infectious energy and your sense of humor has just given me life. So I really
You're kind.
appreciate you taking time to speak with me
You're,
today.
you're so kind, Shaluza. Thank you. I hope you're able to find some ways to kind of plug in certain things to like work on the mental fitness today. I know busy days get very draining, and I'm so appreciative of you giving me the space to be here. So thank you as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us today. And thank you to our listeners for tuning into this episode of Curated Conversations. If you enjoyed the episode, which you must, please rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast on our website, curatedleadership.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also stay connected to us on Instagram, LinkedIn, X, TikTok, all of the places, and subscribe to our newsletter for even more resources on leadership, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Curated Conversations, the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in to Curated Conversations, the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, and share this episode. Subscribe to our podcast or listen to past episodes at curatedleadership.com or wherever you listen to your podcasts. To learn more about Curated Leadership, visit us at Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Curated Leadership. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Curated Conversations.